Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Harriet Parker. Today marks the 84th anniversary of the fall of Singapore, one of the worst military disasters to befall Australia and one of the greatest defeats in British history. Imperial defence planners had regarded Singapore as an impregnable fortress, but by the outbreak of the war in the Pacific, the military resources required for the defence of the Malayan Peninsula, including modern fighter aircraft, had not been adequately provided. From the initial attack on the 8th of December 1941, the Japanese advanced rapidly through Malaya, overwhelming the British and Commonwealth troops. Singapore fell to the Japanese on the 15th of February 1942. Some 1,800 Australian soldiers had died in the fighting, and 15,000 immediately became prisoners of war. The island's fall marked one of the darkest periods in Australian history. Within a 7-week period, 22,000 Australians, including 71 nurses from the Australian Army Nursing Service, had the misfortune to become prisoners of war. In addition, 1,500 Australian civilians, men, women and children, were captured or interred across the region. It was at a time of great anxiety and suffering, not only for the prisoners, but also for the loved ones at home, who would have little, if any, knowledge of the fate or even the whereabouts of the missing troops until after the war ended. The significance of the prisoner of war experience to Australia's Second World War story can be measured by a profound loss of life. 1/3 of those who became prisoners did not survive their captivity. These losses made up half of all combat-related deaths suffered by Australian servicemen and servicewomen during the Pacific War, and the suffering of survivors continued long after their return home. Tonight, we will hear a confronting tragedy from one of the darkest periods of Australia's involvement in the Second World War. Through these painful events and the sacrifices made by individuals, we remain mindful of our history, but not held hostage to it. Today, we remember the fall of Singapore. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. 2026 also marks 125 years of dedicated service by the Australian Army and its predecessors. Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Aubrey Harold Pringle and warmly welcome his family and their close personal friends who are in attendance today. We are honoured to acknowledge Deputy High Commissioner Mr. Wu Chong Long, Singapore High Commission, and Singapore Defence Advisor Colonel Wu Sin Boon and the accompanying delegation. Deputy Commander, Cyber and Specialist Operations, United Kingdom, Air Marshal Surya Marshall, and Chief of Joint Capabilities, Lieutenant General Susan Coyle and the accompanying delegation. We warmly welcome President Emirates 8th Australian Division Association, Colonel David Ross, retired, President of the 2nd 18th Battalion AIF Association, Mr. Evan Richard, President of the 2nd 20th Battalion AIF Association, Mr. Dennis Baker, Vice President of the 2nd 30th Battalion AIF Association, Mr. Bob Goff, Mrs. Barbara Goff, President of the Australian College of Nursing, Group Captain Kath Stein, and the Board of Directors from the Australian College of Nursing, and Group Captain Bruce Chandler, retired, representing the Air Force Association. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier.
Catafalque party, rest on!
If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catafalque party, attention! Catafalque party, present arms!
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Catafalque party, shoulder, arms. Catafalque party, order, arms.
Thank you. If you're able, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Aubrey Harold Pringle. Aubrey Pringle was born in Narromine, New South Wales on the 21st of November 1918. He was the second of 8 children born to William and Phyllis Pringle. The Pringle family moved to Sydney when Aubrey was young, living first at Marrickville before building the family home Warrawidgee in Kingsgrove. Aubrey's father, Bill, was a shearing contractor who travelled for work. Aubrey grew up alongside his siblings, Alan, Betty, Wilbur, Donald, Jean, Ian, and James. Known as Jock, he completed an economics degree, and while doing so, joined the Sydney University Regiment, where he reportedly became friends with the young Roden Cutler. Cutler, a Victoria Cross recipient, was later Governor-General of New South Wales and a member of the knighthood. Jock Pringle enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 13th of July 1940. Granted a commission as lieutenant, he soon joined the 2nd 18th Battalion, part of the 22nd Brigade, which formed part of the Australian 8th Division. After basic training, and then a period of pre-embarkation leave in late December, Lieutenant Pringle and his men embarked on the converted cruise liner Queen Mary on the 3rd of February 1941. Before he left for Sydney, he asked his mother not to cut her hair while he was away. True to his wish, she never did. Arriving in Singapore a fortnight later, Pringle and his comrades were stationed first at Port Dickson and then Mersing on the east coast of Malaya, where they trained in jungle warfare and helped build defences against any invasion of the peninsula. In late November, Pringle was placed on the seriously ill list, suffering from pneumonia. As he recovered in hospital in Singapore, the Japanese launched their invasion. The 2nd 18th stood to arms on the 6th of December 1941, but it was not until the 3rd of January that it encountered its first Japanese, 2 downed airmen who were captured in a hut outside Mersing. Pringle returned to his unit in mid-January 1942 as the Japanese were advancing towards Singapore. On the 17th of January, the battalion received orders to abandon their well-prepared defences at Mersing and withdraw south to Gemmaluang. Japanese successes to the west were threatening to outflank the forces on the east coast. Although never tested, strong defences had dissuaded the Japanese from making a landing around Mersing and using the shortest landward route to advance on Singapore. The 2nd 18th's first major action was Nystyle Estate in the early hours of the 27th of January. The battalion lay in wait for the advancing Japanese and sprang an ambush that inflicted heavy casualties. The men then withdrew to Singapore, where they were allocated a position in the centre of the 22nd Brigade sector on the island's east coast. The wide frontage of the brigade was required to cover, however, meant its platoons and sections had to be widely dispersed. When the Japanese launched their invasion on the night of the 8th of February, the battalion had no hope of holding them back and was broken up during the confusion of the relentless Japanese advance. Pringle became a senior member of X Battalion, a combined force of depleted companies and Indian reinforcements, before being captured on the 11th of February, along with Private Ted Brown of the 2nd 20th Battalion. Brown later reported that, after he and Jock Pringle had been captured, the area was hit by heavy mortar and shell fire, causing the death of 2 Japanese. Brown believed that the 2 captured Australian officers were also killed by this fire while they were being questioned. In 1946, Jock Pringle's remains were found in a shallow grave near a foot track on the slope of a hill. He had been buried beside Lieutenant William Richardson. He and Pringle had been mates, having enlisted on the same day. Jock Pringle was 23 years old. As Singapore surrendered to the Japanese 4 days later, Jock Pringle was spared the suffering of those who became prisoners of war of the Japanese. This would have been a cold comfort for his family, who placed in memoriam notices in the newspaper for years after his death. Today, Jock Pringle's remains lie buried in the Kranji War Cemetery in Singapore, under the inscription chosen by his grieving family, "Duty nobly done." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left amongst the 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Aubrey Harold Pringle, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you're able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Catapult party, shoulder, arms.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Catapult party, present, arms. Catapult party, shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult party, in words, turn. Catapult party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.